Greetings. In this tutorial, we'll deal with lighting exterior. So I'll start with the new level, empty, nothing special. So don't save. So we don't have anything in here. And I probably want to add a landscape first. So I'll just go to Shift 2 and just create a simple landscape. Then switch back to selection. Okay. Quickly add to the project. Let's use this option here, and we have lights. By default we have no light in the scene, so I'll add a directional light and use W to move it around. Okay, so in the directional light we have an intensity of 10 lux and a few other options. One of them that we're looking for, that we want to be sure it's checked and true, it's the atmosphere sunlight. Okay, so this one needs to be enabled. So this means this option will connect this directional light to a sky atmosphere and I think a skylight. So the skylight, I'll put the skylight in here. And basically this means that anything that's in the sky is going to be bounced onto the ground. So I'm looking here in the most option the options that we're going to use most often is this indirect lighting, intensity, and volumetric scattering, and also real-time capture. So if you have clouds that are moving, um, um, that would be probably we want to enable this, so it's going to reflect on the ground what's happening in the sky. So I enable this, but it says, oh yeah, you need a volumetric cloud component or something like that, and we say that yeah, that's okay, we'll add one just right now. So um, I added the skylight. I'm adding a volumetric cloud, and also I need something else because you see the clouds are all the sky is not blue, but it's black. And I also need to add a sky atmosphere. Okay, so far we have directional light, sky atmosphere, skylight, and volumetric clouds. So if I just move around, you can see. And in the distance, we have this dark. Um, basically, it means that there's no light there. The light has no surface. So that's why we have to use something called a exponential height fog. Okay, so let me add that. That will fix that problem. So we have the exponential height fog, um, and we can adjust these values in here as well, like the fog density and the height fall off. So that's pretty much all the elements that we need to have for a lighting scenario. We can use Control L. Holding Control L, we is gonna uh, move this sun position, right? So we can have let's say sunset or noon or something like that. If we go to directional light, um, if I remember correctly, the light source angle, no, it's not that. I'm trying to remember. Okay, yeah, it's the source angle. So if I would just increase that without the clouds, you can see the sun disk is much larger here. And if we reduce it, it's gonna vanish. So the default value is 0.5. But I think we can also go up 10, for example, if you want to really, really make it like stylize or exaggerate that. Um, okay, something else that I wanted to discuss. Um, so for example, we have this really, really large sun, and that would cause shadows. So our shadows will be soft. So the larger the emitter, the light emitter is, the softer the shadows will become. Okay. Um, at noon, the shadows are quite, if I go back to 0.5, are quite sharp. You can see it here. Yeah, because it's smaller. But as we increase this, you can see the shadows are getting more soft. So this is something to keep in mind, not just with this light, but with all the lights. Okay, so changing the size of our light, for example, the point light here, well, it's quite tiny by default. And if I just disable the directional light, okay, and you can see this um, really, really hard shadow. So this light has different parameters. One of them is called attenuation radius, which means how far the light can travel before it fades. And we have a source radius, which makes the source of the light, similar like the sun, becomes greater, and the shadow will become softer. Sometimes this might cause some artifacts, um, and I mean, on lower spec machines you might get it's going to render more slower, or you might have artifacts. My laptop is not that great, so there are kind of like pros and cons. Also, the engine scalability settings here in settings, um, it's a good way to kind of set up the quality. I set mine to high, or even probably medium I should have went to, because of the machine that I'm working on. But if yours is better, you can use Epic or even Cinematic for yeah, for best results. Um, okay, so and also we also have this indirect lighting intensity. By default is set to 1, but if we go twice, this will make actually this will bounce the light around. Basically, this is what it is. So if I go here and I just position my light in a different location, and if I go here in indirect lighting, set it to 0 and set it to 6, I don't know if you can see it, but there's more uh, light bouncing in that area. So I'll just scale this so you can see this a little bit better. So using W and Alt, holding Alt is just gonna just duplicate that. And it's also important the color of the materials. So for example, let's say that this has a material which is 100% white, right? These cubes here, and I can create. Let me just create a simple material here. Right click material, call it a base and gray. and I need to have something put in the base color. Um, so I'll use 3. I'll press 3 keyboard and click, and then go here and go a value of 50%, something like that. Yeah, something like 50. This is a 50% gray, and I plug the color inside the base color. And also don't freeze on me. Okay, and also the roughness, I'll just use a 1 click, and I don't want any roughness. Probably I want, I want a value of 1 here. So that means full roughness. So 100% rough. It has no specularity. Um, so I can use this base gray instead. And even on the ground, let's see, on the landscape uh, should have a, but this material is not set to landscape material. So anyway, um, that's something for a different story. So instead, I'll just create another shape, and I'll just put it above this. And put this in here as well. Okay, so if we're looking at this map, we have an let's bump up the intensity and also the indirect lighting. And you can see we're getting some bounce light here, which means it's kind of more diffuse and softer. Okay. So these are quite a lot. We use these a lot. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create another an exponential height fog. Oh, I think I have one already. Okay, so exponential height fog. We have it here. The density is quite low, and there's no volumetric fog. So basically, if I would enable my lights, okay, and I go to my exponential height fog and I enable this volumetric fog, um, that would create um, some sort of misty elements. And we'll create some God rays and stuff like that. Let me just disable the light. So you can see now this like very foggy. It looks very foggy in here, and it's also being affected by the volumetric scattering in here, this option, right? And the more we increase that, the more we get that effect in the fog. So it works in conjunction with the point light, with the exponential height fog, together with the volumetric fog option enabled. Okay. And there's a bunch of options here that we can use. And also we can change the color of the fog and the emissive and the view distance. extinction scale, which might be too much. Okay, so in a nutshell, um, a few important things. Now, what I want to also cover here is this thing called exposure. So the exposure in this environment, it's set to um, game settings. So you can disable it and change it to manual over here, and we can change the value. So that's good for rendering, but if we play, it's gonna go away. It's gonna switch everything on from here, and also this is gonna be switched to game settings. Okay, it's pretty much useless, but we can use something called let's see, a post-process volume. So this post-process volume, by default, it's this box, and only inside the box is being affected. Basically, we need to make it infinite or unbound. So enable that. This would mean that everything, even outside the box, will be affected. Okay, so and now we need to search for the exposure. So we go in this box here, exposure, and we enable this, and we switch it to manual. Okay, and we set we let's say set it to 12 or something like that, and that's going to be the, no matter the intensity of the light, it's always going to keep this constant. So for example, if I enabled my directional light um, here, so that's the directional light, and if I disable my post-process volume, and my light has a value of 3150, look what happens. It's just changing, it's reducing the exposure to be bearable. All right, so if it's 4 or if it's 100, it's the same. Basically, it's not doing anything. It's because we have something called auto exposure. But if we enable the post-process volume now, you see that we change the exposure to manual, and we have this value in here. And no matter the intensity of the light, the exposure is gonna be kept. Right, so we can make it quite dark, and it's keeping the the mode. I hope you got this with the post-process volume.